In late 1993, VFL CEO Ross Oakley announced that a new team would be added to the competition, adding the presence of Fremantle to the Western Australian teams, starting in 1995. And since 1995, the Dockers have seen little success, making one grand final in 2013. Other than that, Fremantle have struggled to get back to the contenders list. While researching for a video exploring the biggest trade deal flops in AFL history, I'd realised the Fremantle Dockers had come up so often that a video could be made highlighting some of the most unbelievable deals that will make you scratch your head thinking what the Dockers list management was thinking when it decided to make these trade deals. In preparation for the 1995 AFL season, the recently admitted Fremantle Football Club sought to recruit Andrew McLeod, who was coming off a 1994 premiership win for the Port Adelaide Football Club at the SANFL. The young star was highly touted in the SANFL, and the Dockers, as a new club on the block, had their pick of two players from the SANFL to recruit over the Adelaide Crows. McLeod was flown to Western Australia, where he met with the Dockers' new coach, Gerard Neesham. At the meeting, Neesham asked McLeod to stand up to assess his height. McLeod found the question disrespectful and due to that refused to join Fremantle. In McLeod's own words, he felt disrespected as Neesham also never heard of him and seemed to not think highly of him by his appearance.
I just didn't like the vibe of the meeting. I was sitting there with my dad and was in a tiny little room and just didn't feel right, and I guess because of that I just thought there was a bit of a lack of respect. So,
did Jared make you more uncomfortable when he asked you to stand up and have a look at your dimensions?
Yeah, it was a bit of that, and I had a couple of earrings in as well, and he didn't like my earrings. And
is it true? Did he say to you they've got to go, the earrings?
Yeah, he wasn't real happy with them.
Tim Johnson, who was Adelaide's recruiter at the time, found out about this exchange between McLeod and Neesham, prompting Adelaide Football Club's general manager Bill Sanders to contact McLeod's father, expressing their interest in recruiting McLeod. Eventually, a trade agreement was reached between Adelaide and Fremantle, with Fremantle acquiring Chris Groom in exchange for McLeod. McLeod would go on to forge a decorated 340-game Hall of Fame career, where he won back-to-back Norm Smith medals for the Crows in their only premiership victories in 1997 and 1998. Became a 5-time All-Australian, winning a Lee Matthews Trophy and 3-time Best and Fairest. Chris Groom, on the other end of that trade deal, would feature for the inaugural Fremantle side only 7 times before being delisted and playing 5 more games for North Melbourne, before ending his career. I feel that if the Dockers really wanted McLeod, they would have been able to make amends with him for the interaction with Neesham. But unfortunately for them, they let arguably the greatest Adelaide Crows player ever to walk out of their door for peanuts. Draft picks are worth their weight in gold for AFL clubs looking to build the next dynasty team. And for the Dockers, who ended their first 8 seasons near the bottom of the ladder, would have benefited from having high draft picks to recruit young champions. However, in 1994, the Dockers would give up not only 1, but 2 high draft picks to the Bombers, resulting in significant repercussions. In 1994, the Dockers held picks number 1 and pick 4. Fremantle relinquished the 4th pick in the draft for a chance at obtaining more experienced players to take the field in their inaugural season. While it can be difficult to criticise the decision to obtain a player that has proven themselves at AFL level for a draft pick, in hindsight, the decision would objectively be one the Dockers would regret, as they obtained the services of Tony Delaney, who would only play 28 games for the Dockers. Essendon would pick up Scott Lucas in that year's draft, who would forge a 270-game career, kicking 471 goals and being part of the all-domineering Essendon team that would win the 2000 premiership. Alongside Lucas during this era, the Bombers would forfeit their full forward Todd Ridley to the Dockers. In return, the Bombers were given a compensation pick for losing a contracted player to the newly formed Fremantle team, which they happily took to recruit their future all-time leading goal scorer in Matthew Lloyd the following year in the 1995 pre-season draft. The arranged deal with Essendon involved the Dockers agreeing not to recruit any uncontracted player from any team that finished below Essendon in 1994. This would ensure that Essendon would have the first choice of the 16-year-olds in the compensation draft, resulting in Lloyd, who is the all-time leading goal scorer for Essendon, kicking 926 goals over 270 games, 12 times leading goal scorer for the Bombers, and 3-time Coleman medalist, and 5-time All-Australian. the duo of Lloyd and Lucas would since be much a vital piece in the success of Essendon in the late 90s and early 2000s. Who knows what they could have been for Fremantle had the Dockers decided to build up a young group as opposed to obtaining experienced talent. Freo would offload the number 1 pick in the 2001 draft along with pick 20 and pick 36 to Hawthorn for Trent Crode and Luke McFarlane. This trade was quite controversial as Crode was a former number 3 draft pick who had played 84 games and kicked 80 goals. Many fans were outraged at the trade as Crode was much adored by the fans at Hawthorn and many would even protest the trade. McFarlane, on the other hand, was the number 10 pick in the 1999 draft and had only played 12 games to that point. Nonetheless, those picks would bring in 2 of the greatest Hawks ever in Luke Hodge and Sam Mitchell, both premiership captains who are 4-time premiership winners, best and fairest and decorated players in their own right, while Crode would be traded back to Hawthorn for pick 10, which turned out to be Riley Dunn, who only played 8 games for Fremantle. McFarlane had an admirable career of 256 games, with a best and fairest win in 2012 and being acknowledged in Fremantle's 25 best players since 1995. However, when put up against Hodge and Mitchell, there is no doubt about who won that trade. At the conclusion of the 2018 AFL season, Lachie Neale, who had come off a second best and fairest season for the Dockers, previously winning the Doig medal in 2016, requested a trade out of Fremantle to the Brisbane Lions. As a result of this, the Brisbane Lions gave up picks number 6, 19 and 55. Ross Lyon, who was the coach at the time of Neale's departure, believed Neale had left for financial reasons, despite Neale not providing an explanation as to his reason for leaving. A couple of years later, Lyon would discuss his perspective on the Neale trade.
He had a year to go. I think they could have held him. I think there was no doubt there was some monetary issues involved. I'm really close relationship with Lachie Neale. At the end of the day, money counts, and I think he was on a reasonable, but Brisbane come with a top-of-the-tree offer. And I think once you get that in front of you, it's too late when the club then comes back. Even if they, let's throw some figures around 750, 800. He would have had his own motivations. Brisbane sold a good story. Clearly, they were accurate in what they put in front of him. I think monetary-wise, it was a life changer for him. Could Fremantle get to that level, or did they get to that level too late and he'd made his mind up?
Perhaps had Fremantle pounced to keep Neale quicker, he would still be in the purple jumper. The pick number 6, which the Dockers received from Brisbane, was offloaded to Melbourne for Jesse Hogan. And sticking true to form, this trade was not good in hindsight, as Hogan would only play 19 games as injuries, mental health, and breaching the club's alcohol policy affected his contribution with the Dockers. The Demons would offload pick 6 to Gold Coast, who would acquire Ben King in the 2019 draft. Melbourne would receive Cade Kolajasny and Stephen May from the Suns, the latter of which forming an integral part in the Demons' premiership winning defence.